this is an area where we really wanted to draw attention to more than just the fact that it's labor arbitrage. Okay, but let's at least contrast a global delivery model versus a rural delivery model, and what you can expect to see in a typical engagement for labor arbitrage. And that'll be the very first block, if you will. If you're comparing against your internal costs here and over on the right, that's your internal cost of doing business today. The reason people go to outsourcing is because of the next big block, which is the labor arbitrage, but cost savings in labor. Okay? What we're trying to present today is the real concept of that labor arbitrage gets eaten into, if you will, or eroded. That savings in labor is not a savings that you can take to the bank. There are other management constraints or practices that you have to put into place in order to be effective to deliver the same amount of work. And those areas are really the ongoing governance, and they're different. The ongoing governance for a global delivery model is going to be a bit heavier than the ongoing governance for a rural model. Right? Makes sense. Closer, fewer issues to address, time zones, right? Makes sense. Other things, communications. Not just the physical connectivity, but the whole communication plan associated with being halfway around the world versus being down the street 2 hours. Okay? Substantial difference. And then lost productivity. And lost productivity includes the attrition rates that you see, and that's a huge difference in a rural setting versus a global setting. The attrition rates that you're going to see in an India or offshore area is going to be 30, 40, 50%. What you're seeing in the rural areas are down in single digits, 0, 3, 4, 5%, 12%. In East Liverpool, Marty talked a little bit about kind of the culture there. People grow up in that area. They want to be in that area. When you get them an opportunity to go through the training program and to be a part of a delivery center, that's great employment, and they love it. And we have had 0 attrition in 4 years. That's unheard of, and don't hold me to keeping it that way forever, but it's substantially better than 30, 40% attrition. And that eats away at your knowledge base within the engagement, and the whole ramping people up and getting them to the point where they can be effective. And we have a slide on what that looks like, but it really eats your productivity up. This is a slide from one of our white papers, and it's contrasting 2 delivery centers in ciber. So we're using the same processes, it's the same company delivering to our customers. One is domestic and one is global. And productivity is a very difficult thing to get your arms around and to measure. But one of the measures that we're using is defect trending. Right? It's something you can get your hands on easily. It has a real impact to your application stability and your end users. So we trended, when we would bring in new engagements to the development centers, what was the average number of defects that were produced in those delivery centers, and then trended that over time. So you can see on the blue line, that's a domestic delivery center, and we can stabilize an environment in roughly 3 to 4 months. We get down to 0 defects in a new engagement on average within 4 months. Same processes, same methodologies, same company, in a global setting takes 10 months. Substantial difference, right? Application stability. What we're really focused on is our time to productivity. When you have to recruit people, train people, get them onboarded, teach them the applications, the processes, all of that work to finally get them to the point that they know what they're doing, they can do it with minimal oversight and guidance and deliver the same throughput with 0 defects We thought this was a very telling story. So obviously a little bit easier when you can see people, they're using the same culture in the same time zone, and when we really believe that a lot of it comes to the culture, right? The communication with folks that are readily available to you, following the same processes, can get the job done faster.
Do I read your chart right? That you're actually saying to because the red line doesn't even start in month 2.
Right.
That means in the offshore scenario, you don't start doing anything to have any defects for a month longer.
That's a great point. I was hoping someone would notice that. In the offshore, it takes us longer to get the processes in place to actually track the defects. So it's not that they're not doing any work, it's they're not getting the work done and completely measured. All of the processes aren't in place and stabilized to capture the defects. So what I would also like to have had an opportunity to build was what were the defects in the client environment. But if any of you have done large-scale engagements for customers, there's rarely data available for that type of stuff. Volume data, defect data. If they have that, they usually don't need an outsourcer. Right? But that would have been a nice picture to have. And thanks for picking that up. Was there other questions?
Yeah. Did you say this were just two projects, or an average of multiple projects?
Great question. Average of multiple projects, multiple engagements in the same delivery centers. So we have a domestic delivery center running multiple engagements, and we start the clock the day the engagement begins, and we track the defects that are produced on our accounts. And we did that in a domestic as well as a global delivery basis. Other questions?
Cool.
Just real quickly, Don has been involved for a number of years in the client delivery side of the business. I spent a lot of years on the other side as the client being delivered to. And I have the same kind of chart. In fact, we used to keep 4 different measures for engagements with a very large offshore vendor, and it really wasn't dissimilar. In fact, it's kind of interesting. We used to track defect rates, rework rates, throughput on various engagements, and you're right, we would seldomly, if ever, share that with the outsourcer, other than when we wanted to get together and say you're not performing to our service level agreement. So it's 2 different perspectives. Like I said in the kickoff, as a client, I've seen very similar data. Okay, let's take a look if offshoring is the onshoring is the right thing to do for you. A couple of things that we talked about and Don alluded to is that organization and culture does make a difference in the decision to offshore versus onshore. I mean, how well do you manage change? Are you an organization that's already global? Are you an organization that's already gone through the 10 to 15 years of transitioning work to India and China and other locations? You've already paid for it. Making a transition may not make sense to you because you've already gone through all those delivery problems and issues associated. Are you a firm that's very risk tolerant? You know, you're cash rich. Someone's writing the checks. You're fine, and you can see your way through for the next couple, 3 years without any issues. Again, making a change may not be the right thing for you. Process rigor. Anytime you move stuff offshore, processes have to be put into place. As Don alluded, it's a couple of months just to get that thing set up so you can actually even measure yourself, much less provide any productive labor. Again, if that doesn't make any difference to you, rural onshoring may not be the right thing for you.